Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple podcast.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Westman here. And from time to time, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to movers and shakers in the low carb and fitness world in general. So it's my great pleasure to have Vinnie Tortorich with me. How are you doing, Vinnie?
I'm doing great, Eric, and I can't thank you enough for having me on. I love that guys like you are doing these type of shows because, whenever you have some bro science guy or whatever, you go, all right, well, that guy is spewing something, but he has no degrees to his name. You have several degrees, including MD, and the work you've been doing down at Duke, as your audience may not know yet, but you were in my first documentary, Fatted documentary. And, whenever I put together my wish list, you were at the top of that list to say, I got to get this guy on.
So we'll get to that in just a minute. Now, I want to just please introduce yourself to the followers or people who wouldn't know who you are. Of course, you have a umpteen followers, but my group tends to be clinical. We podcast with the idea of getting information to people or my patients, actually. And so anyway, we'll get to our interaction and all. But I'd like my viewers get to know you a little bit, where you're from, how you got into this, and part of my podcasting and YouTubing really was following you, Vinnie. So back at you. So who are you? How'd you get into this?
I'm a guy who grew up in Louisiana, went to Tulane on a football scholarship, didn't know what I wanted to do, so I got a degree in exercise physiology and nutrition, which, when you think about it, in 1984, makes you the most overqualified PE teacher in the world. As a matter of fact, right before I left college, I didn't know what I was going to do for a living. I went and got my teaching credentials and had to do the in classroom just so. It's like, wow, what do you do with this degree? It's like, I guess I have to become a PE teacher. And so I did do my student teaching and the whole deal. Never used it, but I did go to work as the assistant strength and conditioning coach for Tulane University, my alma mater, for 5 minutes, knowing that I wouldn't. I was trying to make enough money to live. And this other school, Newman School, which is a high school, and they're noted because that's where the Manning kids went to school, Peyton and Cooper and Eli. And I had the pleasure of coaching two of those, Cooper and Peyton. And that's where I started making my bones. I started working with some of the socialites up and down St. Charles Avenue. And I became well known as the guy to get weight off of people. Now, Eric, as you know, in 1984, you couldn't find a fat person, especially amongst the wealthy, right? It just didn't exist. So I was working in a world where women just wanted to become thinner. They were already size 3s. I know this sounds all ridiculous, but hey, I had a career and I didn't have to walk into a classroom. So that's what I did. But I noticed my students on my afternoon gig at Newman School, I was there from 3 to 6 every day. I noticed they were getting fatter and fatter. They didn't look the way I did a few years earlier when I graduated high school in 81. So I went off to Hollywood to try to create children's programming to fight obesity. And when I got there in the early 1990, I got laughed out of Hollywood. They were like, wait, you want to do what? I want to tell kids on television not to eat sugars and grains. And I just got laughed out of television, right? They were like, you can't do that. All of our sponsors are the cereal box companies and Coca-Cola and, Mars and on and on and on. So I was stuck in Hollywood and I became known in the Hollywood community as the quick weight loss guy, because I took a heavy-set celebrity and knocked 60 pounds off of her for a sitcom. And that started this incredible career for me that I couldn't reproduce now if my life depended on it. It was right place at the right time.
Well, so what did you use? How did you help people slim down?
Well, I would go in and tell them that I would take them off of all carbs. And I was working off of, I had read books. I read Banting, the letter on corpulence back again. I was a nerd, Eric. Probably like you. We grew up nerding out on things, and there was no computer. And, the letter on corpulence was big for me. And then Atkins came around and, pushed that ahead by a lot, right? By creating the new Atkins. And then you came along and wrote the new Atkins for the new you, and that's where you got onto my radar, even before, kind of the internet thing was a big deal. But I knew low carb was the way to go. The only reason that Hollywood would listen to a guy like me was because actors are type A+ personalities. And they are the hardest working human beings. They're like Olympic athletes. Whatever it takes to get the job done, that's what they're going to do. Again, right place at the right time. If I came in and said, we're taking you off of bread, potatoes, pasta, anything that looks like a bread, corn, and you're going to be eating meat and bacon and fish and chicken, their attitude was, well, I'm getting ready for a movie role. It won't kill me to do this for the next 2 or 3 months, right? Even though everyone knew certainly that bacon had to be bad for you and red meat was going to kill you if you ate it long term, but actors don't think that way. I need to slim down because I have to be naked in a movie. That's what I'm going to do. And the bigger part of that was this little nuance where some of these actresses that were in movies when movies were still a thing, they would be in shape for the movie, and then they would schedule having a kid right when the movie, when they cut, right? The movie doesn't come out for a whole year. So they would have a kid, but now part of their contract is they have to go walk the red carpet and go on Jay Leno and go on, Oprah and everything else to promote it. But they have mommy weight. Well, guess what? Vinnie can come in and put them on this high meat diet and have them walk on a treadmill and run up and down mountains, and they're going to look just fine, right? So I had kind of 2 careers. I was able to double dip on a lot of things, but that's how it happened.
Well, so you got results, right? It works.
Yeah, that's the long and the short of it. And I got a lot of results.
And then I suppose you weren't in the clinic where the person will go to the doctor next door and they'll say, "Oh, you can't do that because your LDL will go up." The actors are doers and they're going to do it. And were you concerned about anything safety wise? I mean, back then you did Atkins for a day. I got in trouble at the hospital where I was doing this study, minor trouble, but had you any concern, or were you already doing it maybe?
Not a lot. And you know what? Let's call it ignorance, because, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I remember growing up.
That's how I got into this. When someone said, "Oh, you're so daring," I said, no, really. I just didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. But, Eric, you and I think you're a little younger than me, but we grew up in an age where the word cholesterol didn't exist. Like, no one cared or thought about cholesterol at all, right? No one knew what their numbers were. Doctors weren't talking about it. My grandparents and great-grandparents, all from the old country, I'm Italian on both sides, they ate fish every day. They ate red meat every day. They ate pork, chicken, and we also ate a lot of game because parts of my family was very poor, but we did a lot of hunting. So we were eating animal protein every day. We drank whole milk. I never heard of skim milk. I mean, it just did not exist. Cheese, all of the stuff was considered nutrient dense, right? And so I never heard the word cholesterol until I heard the word cholesterol. And then people started going, well, aren't you worried about cholesterol? And I was like, no, why? And it was, well, all this stuff raises cholesterol. It was like, but I thought cholesterol was good. Like every cell in your body used cholesterol. So I didn't, and then all of a sudden they started coming up with numbers, and you would know better than me. The first numbers were in the 200s. Do you remember what the early numbers were? The cutoff numbers?
They kept going down over time. No, and then it depends if it's a total cholesterol or an LDL cholesterol. But those numbers, yeah, were higher, and then they made them lower and lower, and yeah. So that's when the medical world got into the mix here, and kind of messed everything up. Well, in the food world. But I think it's really neat that you were able to have a career. I mean, it's kind of like Dr. Atkins at the time. He had people come to him, movie stars, and one of the stories I heard, I met him in 1998. One of the stories I heard is that he traveled to treat Imelda Marcos in the Philippines. I mean, so he was like on the world stage. And then I emailed correspondence with a doctor in the Hollywood area. I think he is retired in the last 10 years or so, but he kind of told me by email that, yeah, he'd use the Atkins diet. Wait, maybe it was you? No, it was someone else who was using Atkins with the movie stars. And but that's neat. And then why Hollywood, and then why films? How did you? This is kind of, not typical.
Yeah, I never gave any thought to working with celebrities. It all happened by, I guess, happenstance. When I first got there, I didn't know anyone, and I knew that I would have to crank up my training business like I had done in New Orleans. And there weren't, not everybody was a trainer back then, right? Like most trainers had either a degree or some semblance of a background in fitness to some degree. Now everybody's, oh, hairdressing didn't work out, dog walking failed me, I'll become a trainer. Literally it's that easy. Certification makes anyone a trainer. You don't have to have any 4-year degree or, anything. So I was kind of there at the beginning when people were still hiring trainers and paying us crazy amounts of money. But when I first got to Hollywood, I didn't know a soul. I was taking meetings at Disney and Nickelodeon to try to push my child fitness thing, but I looked around and went, okay, if I don't start making money pretty quickly, I'm going to go broke. So a friend of a friend knew the secretary who worked at Playboy Corporation. She was actually the secretary to the president of Playboy in Los Angeles, which was the video world division. And I met my first client through her. We had lunch. She had married a guy from Baton Rouge, so we felt like we had something in common, and we were still chatting, and I walked her back to her desk to say goodbye, and one of the VPs saw me and said, hey, who's that guy? And she was like, he's this trainer. He just moved to town. I know him from New Orleans. He's got a great reputation. Well, it just so happened that this woman weighed 320 pounds. And I charged her much less. I can't remember what the number was, but almost nothing to train her almost every day. And because I needed to prove my worth. I got her eating low carb. I got her exercising. She went from 320 down to 140 in less than like a year, like 8 or 9 months. And Eric, I was on her, right? Now I picked up a couple more VPs over at Playboy. That led into Playmates. Playmates are adjacent to real celebrities. And that was kind of the meandering into, they would tell, the boyfriends, hey, that's this guy Vinnie, and you should call him. It's just, like I said, if I had to move back to Hollywood and try to crank up now as a young guy, I would tell everyone, do not do it. I got lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, but I heard that theme in other places where you go to the leadership, flip, or do low carb, keto, or whatever you're doing, and you can actually influence then sometimes the whole company, right? Yeah, well, that's brilliant. And then how this, so we overlapped. I remember we're at a meeting, a keto meeting, a low carb meeting, and there's some movie thing going on up in one of the hotel rooms where this guy came up from LA, and anyway, so I get these lights are on, and how did you get involved with Fat, a documentary, well, the other film, and what motivates you there?
Well, the first one, Fat, a documentary. All right. So people kept, the podcast, Fitness Confidential, and my book were both for lack of any other term, and I sound like I'm bragging, but they were both juggernauts, right? We started podcasting when there wasn't 5 million, literally 5 million out. There was like 150,000 podcasts. So we were at the top of iTunes and, killing it there. And then the book Fitness Confidential came out. I was aware of you because you were at the time, you started doing things, the New Atkins for the New You, and some other books came out. So you were always on my radar, so I became a fan. And then people started saying, you should do a documentary. And I was like, well, why me? And they said, well, because you're in Hollywood. I don't think that qualifies me. That's like saying I live near a racetrack. I should be a race car driver, right? It's like, I live near Cape Canaveral. Okay, let's get in the rocket, right? You can be an astronaut. So everyone was toying with the idea, and some people started coming up with money for me to do stuff. But every time someone with money came around, they wanted me to do some schlocky stuff. Like one of the things is like, take a pair of twins and put one on this diet and put one. I said, but you know what? That would be doing exactly what the vegan propaganda guys are doing, and I don't want to do that. Well, no, you could do this and you could do that and you could do all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's going to look like I cooked it. And so I'm not going to do it. Right. And so I went away from the idea, and I was leaving the Adam Carolla show one day, and this guy, Peter Pardini, was taking my seat for the second part of the show. He had just finished a documentary about the band Chicago called Chicago Now More Than Ever, which was winning awards. And he goes, hey, man, it's a pleasure to meet you. And I said, great. He goes, I read your book. I listened to your podcast. And I was like, yeah, sure you do. He goes, no, I lost like 25 pounds. I can't, I'm exaggerating. It could have been 50, it could have been 80. I don't know. But he lost a lot of weight and he looked great. So I was like, man, that's very kind. So I watched his documentary and it was wonderful. And he had given me a card. So I called him to leave a message. He go, hey, it's Vinnie. Your documentary was wonderful, right? But he picked up the phone and we started chatting, and one thing led to another, and he kept going, you should do a documentary. And I said, Peter, I don't have the money for that. And he goes, I would do it. I would help produce it. I would do everything. I would direct it. You just have to be the guy in it. And I said, but where's the money going to come from? So he says, we'll crowdfund it. And I said, okay. No one's going to give me money. So yeah, let's crowdfund it and that'll shut you up and you'll go home. So we asked for $150,000 on Kickstarter, and we ended up getting $250,000. We got $250,000.
And what year was this? Do you remember off the top of your head? Yeah.
We put it out in 18, so like 17 or it was somewhere around there, 16 or 7, like 17, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
And so, now we got all this money, so we hired a film crew. We went to that hotel because like 70% of the people we wanted to talk to was at that low-carb conference.
Yeah.
So I got 2 rooms. And Eric, you saw what we did. We went into that room like the A-team. If the hotel knew what we did in there, they would just freak out. We literally
I'm not down.
dismantled. Yeah, we dismantled. Beds are like bolted into the wall. We removed everything out of that room without the hotel knowing, and moved a sound stage into that room. Big lights, everything. And like Gary was the first guy to come in. Gary, I want to say Fetke, but it wasn't Fetke. It was Gary. Gary comes in. He thought I was going to have like a cell phone set up on a tripod, and we were going to do something. Excuse my language, Gary walked in, he goes, "Holy shit." I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "You built a studio in this room." And I said, "Yeah, the sound guy's in the bathroom." We had a sound guy in the bathroom. We had cables going to the next room over the balcony. We had a video village, just like any other movie set I've ever been on with my clients. It was exactly that. That's why that film looks so good. And then we had to do the same thing at my house. We gutted a room in my house and built a sound stage there. And that's where Nina came, and Jim Abrams from,
Charlie Foundation.
Yeah, Charlie Foundation, and he's a big producer. And he was impressed. When Jim Abrams shows up and he goes, "You built a sound stage in your house?" I was like, "Yeah." And he thought for a second. He goes, "Why didn't we ever think of doing that?" When I'm done in that.
So it's less expensive than bringing all of us to somewhere, right?
Yeah, I out into Muhammad. It's
yeah.
I just reverse engineered, and it worked. And everyone showed up either to my house or to.
But so why target fat? I mean, so if you didn't want to do let's put two twins on different diets. I kind of know why you probably wanted to target fat, but this is one of the biggest roadblocks, right? To understanding or to adopting, or what was going through your mind there?
I just wanted to show that fat wasn't a villain, because it went from, everything had fat and protein in it when I was growing up. And, as I said, I went to school on a football scholarship. So everything was about exercising and putting on lean muscle mass. And the way we did that was with red meat. Like, red meat wasn't the enemy when I was growing up. And I'm not sure where I was standing when it became the enemy, right? It's like, was it 1985? Was it more like 90? By the time I got to LA, if you even mentioned red meat, people thought you were crazy. So it was a Sisyphean effort. So I thought maybe if I do a movie showing that somehow fat was vilified, maybe I can bring people back to the 1970s where there was some sanity. So did I answer the question, or did I skirt it? I meant to answer it head on, but I'm not sure if I
so. Yeah, well, it especially makes sense if you were in the idea of trying to help children and help the whole family, one of the major issues is the concern about fat in the food, fat in the blood, the cholesterol, all of that. And how did you meet? The Gary Taubes and Ian Teicholz, those were the ones who did the kind of detailed investigations to just show that in books that the low fat thing really wasn't grounded in science. And but best I can tell, that had never been put into this form, into a movie, right? And what convinced you that was even worth doing? Have you seen other documentaries influence people? I love Chicago, but it's not like that's going to help change the world. I don't know, maybe. Why?
I felt like, I have one shot at it and someone had to do it. It's like, I could be way off here and maybe it's not going to be well received. But as you may or may not know, that movie, it came out the same year as the movie Free Solo, that guy Hannibal that was climbing rocks without, any kind of protection, Alex Hannibal. And he was at the top of the documentary game for most of that year. We toppled that movie on iTunes. And we stayed at the top above him for a couple of months. I don't want to exaggerate, maybe 6 weeks. And then Aretha Franklin died, and a documentary came out at the same time, and she toppled us. But then we toppled her again and went to the top on top of Aretha Franklin, which I kind of felt bad about because I was such a big Aretha Franklin fan. And we stayed at the top of documentaries. The president of Gravitas Ventures, who distributed the movie, called me at some point and said, "You are now the #1 movie we've ever put out." And I went, "Oh my God, that's incredible. The #1 documentary." He said, No. You're the #1 movie. And that was shocking to me because you don't hear that from a health documentary. It makes no sense. So obviously it struck a chord with someone.
So what kind of scope, what kind of scale are we talking? Like hundreds of thousands, million? I mean, what kind of reach can you get through the documentary?
That one got incredible reach. They put it on 65 VODs around the world. So people were sending me screenshots from, "Hey, I'm on Malaysian Airlines." You know, this was going on Twitter and everything. "I'm on Malaysian Airlines. Look, it's on my screen. I'm on Delta going to DC. It's on my screen. I'm in England on, British Airways, and it's on my screen." So it was, my face was everywhere all of a sudden. So it was pretty heady. And look, they, from a financial standpoint, I was told by my buddy Adam Carolla and other people, when you make a documentary, do not expect to make a dime. You will not make the money back. Well, I did make them because at the end, it cost more than $250,000. I had to put a lot of my own money in it to finish it.
Even with the GoFundMe.
Yeah, even with the $250,000, I had to drop a lot of money, but I had so much belief in it. And I went, all of these people gave me their hard-earned money. And even though they were giving me 10, 25, 50, $100, and some people up to $2,000, I had to put tens of thousands of dollars to complete it. And I felt like it was my duty to do that. I just told my wife, just let's consider that money gone. We will never see it again. Maybe enough people will see it that they might listen to the podcast and buy the products we recommend or something. Maybe the money will come back, but we'll never know how. The money came back, plus all of my money came back, plus. And now I'm looking at this money going, I have this weird moral issue with everything. And I'm looking at all this money going, okay, I have this money, but I don't feel like it's mine because other people gave me their hard-earned dollars because they believed in this movie. Now I have this bank account, which was separate from my own bank account, with all of this money in it. It all came back in spades. So during the pandemic, I was feeling guilty and I had time on my hands. So we did Fat Documentary 2. And I told my wife, I went, okay, we got our 40 or 50,000 back. We'll keep that. But I'm putting the rest of it into Fat 2. And then it'll be gone. And then I don't have to worry about that money ever again. Well, lo and behold, it came back again. Yeah, not as big as Fat 1, but it didn't cost as much to do Fat 2. So now I still have this bank account with other people's money. And we decided, okay, let's do a third documentary. My God, we have to lose it at some point. So we did Beyond Impossible. Have you ever seen Beyond Impossible, the third documentary?
No, I haven't. I was reading catching up on today, and no, I haven't seen it. I will, for sure.
That film will boggle your mind. It will literally boggle your mind.
Premise, give us a synopsis if you can.
Well, it's about Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger. Because when those things came out, they said, hey, it's better for you and it's better for the environment because somehow cow farts are killing us or causing some kind of CO2 problem. Ruminants have never had this problem on the atmosphere, but somehow magically now they do. So just like everything else I do, I just went down this deep rabbit hole to figure out how Like by the time you get an Impossible Burger in your hand, what did it take with CO2 carbons and everything? Truth is, I had people like Frederick Lacroix, Frank Mitlerner, all of these people from that community giving me information going, oh, you don't even know the half of it, right? It takes so much CO2 carbon in the atmosphere just to make one burger versus cow meat, and you're eating something that's probably not as healthy as an Oreo cookie. And I'm not being funny, right? You're almost eating carcinogen. When we saw the truth, I literally, when I was making this documentary, I said, people are going to think I'm making this up. So we even tried to downplay some of it. And Eric, you'll love this. I tried to get over at Harvard, Walter Willett.
Walter Willett, yeah.
I tried to get him to do it. I tried to get Greger. I tried to get McDougall. I tried to get all of them. And on the screen, I put my letter to them, and I put their replies back to me, and that's worth the price of admission.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it tonight. I promise.
You will look. Walter Willett said, I'm busy that day. And I wrote back and said, we didn't give you a date. We just asked you to be in the movie.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Of course, McDougall, Dr. McDougall passed away, sadly.
Oh, did he? When?
Yeah. Well, in the last few month or two. And, I'm resisting the hoopla everyone made about Dr. Atkins dying. Well, of course, that was 2003. But anyway, the ad hominem about who comes up with the diet is just overblown and oversold. But even one of the Dr. Joel Furman, one of the vegan doctors, was commenting about the lack of omega-3s for all of his superiors, his teachers that he looked up to were kind of being dementia. And then that's being downplayed by the younger vegan believers, Anyway, it's all important to know. And the junk food, I'm actually primed and ready to watch Beyond Impossible because so many people are coming in with but what about, but red meat's bad and the environment. So people today, it seems to me, will eat under the possibility that it's saving the planet. No, the firm belief it's saving the planet, even when they become harmed by what they eat. This makes no sense to me.
It's bizarro world, Eric. It truly is bizarro world. And I don't know if you know this, but I just put out a 4th documentary. Do you know about this?
No, please.
There's nowhere you are. So
this is why I'm talking to you. Update me.
So we just put out, and it finally came out. It was the first time I did not go through Gravitas. I decided to release it myself, only on Amazon. And it was supposed to be released on May 30th. That day came and went. Amazon wouldn't give us a reason. They wouldn't get back to me. 30 days passed. They got back to me and said, we just hadn't had a chance to review it yet. So I had gone on maybe 20 podcasts to promote this thing, and they just didn't put it out, right? So it's like, okay, they're causing a flop, right? They're causing this big flop. So after like 45 days, they wrote to me and said, okay, we'll put it out, but we have to put a PG-13 rating on it. My friend, I'm going to name drop here, my friend Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs guy. I just did his podcast. His hasn't come out yet. Mike said to me, wait, I watched the whole documentary. Why would they put a PG-13 on it? The answer is, I don't know. You tell me. That's when you know you're ruffling feathers out in the world, Eric, when they don't put it out. Yeah, it's like it should have been out. It wasn't out. Now they give me a BS excuse, tell me a PG-13 rating. And then when it came out, it just came out 3 days ago. They put it under documentaries, but they didn't put it under health. They put it under special interest. So they've hidden my documentary away from anyone who would want to see a health documentary.
What's the name of it and the topic?
It's Dirty Keto, and I'm literally going after you and me. I've gone after us this time. So you are not safe, Eric, and I'm not safe when it comes to me. My thing is, I'm always looking for the truth, right? There's your truth, there's my truth, and then there's a universal truth. And Dirty Keto deals with this incredible industry that's cropped up from people like you and me and Gary and Nina and everyone else. All we did was said, hey, this is how you eat, this is how you lose weight, this is how you get healthy. Big Food went, hold my beer. You need to have keto cakes, keto ice cream, keto bread,
Keto bread,
pasta, pizza.
Yeah.
So I went after that. And if you think my other movies seem strange, you're going to look at this and scratch the rest of the hair off of your head, because you're going to go, wow, I didn't even think of this. I didn't think of that.
That's fantastic. I look forward to watching it. I even sight unseen, I recommend that everyone take a look at your latest two documentaries. Wow. Because, the targeting I've always tried to just push the science that we've done, right? And now I'm getting into I'm debunking some of the other things out there. If someone says keto kills you, I'm reviewing their video and saying, let's just look at the science at this. And it's not killing people. So that's fantastic. And the idea that I teach dirty keto in my clinic in a way, in that I don't insist upon grass-fed beef, locally grown, having your own chickens. And I've had people go to McDonald's and they lose weight by just not eating the carbs, right? So,
right.
But dirty keto, meaning junk food keto, we call that internet keto now. It's kind of the difference between what you read on the internet and see in the store or over-the-counter keto. Prescription strength keto is what we teach in the clinic. It's what's been studied for so long. And it does not, if it says keto on the product, I say be very careful and always look at the total carbs. And we have found that but it's a way for people to enter into just the concept of low carb and keto, but it stalls people. It makes people think that low carb won't work for them because they're eating so many carbs from these non-low carb keto products. Anyway, I wish hamburger or a sirloin or a steak could say, keto, great for keto on it. Why aren't they marked? Oh, right. They're walking on eggshells too, probably,
They are. They really are. Someone asked me, why don't you open a keto restaurant? And it's like, because it's already there. It's called the steak restaurant. Just go there.
Right. The steakhouse.
But steak is, when you eat steak out, for some reason, it's super expensive. And I'm glad you brought up, people ask me, do I have to have, heritage pork and grass-fed beef and all this? Like, listen, I'm an empty nester and we do okay financially, and I can't afford that stuff. Right. I buy the regular stuff just like everyone else, and it's fine. If you can afford that stuff, that's great. The only, kind of grass-fed stuff I eat is if I kill a deer. That's my ruminant, that's grass-fed. But, I tell people to do the best they can. And I remember in your clinic, because people have asked me about that, they'll say, well, Eric Westman says I can use sweeteners. And then I said, yeah, you can use sweeteners, but that's the methadone clinic of,
right.
And that's the point. I bet Eric wants you off of that, and they go, yeah, he does. It's like, okay, you can do the ramp if you want, or you can rip the Band-Aid off. Both ways work. There is
that's the internet doesn't tell you, this is for people who have diabetes, and this is for people who are in the clinic. And this is for people who are young and already, so you got to watch who the influencer is. And my typical client, typical patient, there's no way they're going to exercise or afford all that stuff. So you have to be careful consuming all that information, seeing that if it applies to you. I want to switch gears a little bit and pick your brain about exercise and the importance of it. And I say this because a lot of my patients will be watching, and they know that I've been emphasizing diet. In fact, I say it's 100% diet at first, right? People come to me in wheelchairs, and I can get them to exercise, or get them to lose weight. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. But eventually, exercise is critical to health and wellness and flexibility, longevity. So how would you help put on your personal trainer hat of the person who just gained a whole lot of weight, they're pregnant, now they have a new movie coming up and they have to lose the weight and exercise it too. How would you start and then motivate and convince someone that, for the long run, you really need to exercise?
Every time I walk on stage to give a talk, and I say it a lot on my podcast, the first words out of my mouth is, exercise is an extremely poor way to try to lose weight. And they were looking, wait, he's an exercise guy. I make my living off of telling people to exercise. Yeah. Fact is that I've seen people, from the couch say, okay, in the next year I'm going to run a marathon, which means they run a 5K, and then they run a 10K, and then they run a half, and then they train for months and months and months. It takes about another 20 weeks to get ready for a full, right? So you can accomplish that in 1 year. I've seen the same people get to the starting line of that race heavier than they were when they started training. And my good friend, Timothy Noakes, have you ever had Tim on the show, by the way?
No, not yet, but yeah, I'd like to interview Tim.
I want to see you and Tim on the same podcast. You got to make that happen. He's probably the foremost authority in the world. Me as an exercise physiologist, he's the god, right? He's who we all bow down to because he's done a lot of research. And he's even admitted that as he got older, he couldn't outrun the form, right? So what does this mean? I'm going to use the marathon as an example. Someone thinks, okay, I'm going to start running. I'm going to look lean and sinewy, just like the guy from Zimbabwe, but genetically, you're never going to look like that guy. So forget it. So that's number one. Number two, you got to the line heavier than you started, because the first thing you did when you started running was you went to a running store, and the running store sells two products. They sell running shoes, which is probably a good idea. Number two, they have what I call the wall of sugar, right? So after you buy the running shoes, they have every product on that wall to have you, you name it, honey this, hammer that, every bar. It comes in powders, bars, goops. It's just nothing but maltodextrin from end to end. And right when you get to the cash register, there's something called Runner's World magazine and also Running magazine. Every ad in that magazine is either from a running shoe company or one of these sugar companies. And they're writing articles telling you the only way you can run is you have to have all of these carbs all the time. Now, Eric, when I was a kid, people would run 10Ks, and the only thing they would do is somewhere around 5K, they would pass by a table and grab a plastic cup of water and pretty much throw it in their face, throw the cup aside, and continue running. People ran marathons and never had one drop of carbohydrates for the entire 26.2 miles. But now we have something you can buy called a fuel belt. This is a belt where you can put all of the maltodextrin on your waist so you can grab it like, John Wayne, do a couple of steps, get it in your mouth, and just keep the sugar rolling. If you think you're burning all that sugar while you're running, you have another thought. It just doesn't work that way. You're getting bad effects of sugar and not the good effects. Now, if you're a sugar burner, yeah, you're going to bonk at some point, because as soon as your blood sugar drops from you being on a spike, you need to cram more sugar in your mouth or you can't finish. So those people will tell me, Vinny, you don't know what you're talking about. You need sugar to finish a race. But if I can get you fat adapted, I climbed Mount Whitney, which is a 14-hour round tripper. I climbed Mont Blanc over in France, it took me longer than 14 hours. I've done both of those, fat adapted. Also Gran Paradiso, which took me about 10 hours, 12 hours. That's a glacier in Italy. All of these things, fat adapted, not 1 ounce of sugar. Now, I bring sugar with me, and usually what I bring is a roll of lifesavers, because if you end up having, a blizzard comes in, or you fall into a crevasse and you have to work hard to come out, and you go into zone 4 to work yourself out, you're going to burn up some of your blood glycogen, and you can be below the level. And guess what will get you there? It's in the name. It's called a lifesaver, right? It brings you right back, and you can continue on. You don't need the big glob of sugar that they're telling you need. So that's number one. But I think I got off track just a little bit. So exercise is a poor way to lose weight. I've had people lose, just like you, in wheelchairs, lose 100, 150, 200 pounds. Couldn't exercise other than using their arms, right?
Yeah.
So the question becomes, well, if you don't need exercise to lose weight, why exercise at all? Well, good question, but I have an answer. Exercise is the fountain of youth. You use it or you lose it. That's it. It's the fountain of youth. Well, what does that mean then? Well, if you're not using your heart every day above what you would normally use it to walk around, or you're just sitting with your basal metabolic rate trying to keep you going, if you're not using it, things begin to atrophy. Your heart is a muscle just like any other muscle. Your lungs work the same way. You want your VLI to stay strong. You want your lungs to stay strong. So you want to work these things. So do you have to go in zone 4, meaning 90 to 100% of your aerobic capacity? Absolutely not. You can be in high zone 1. That would be a walk, right? Or a slow jog. Or if you have an exercise bike, you can just kind of move along. Being in zone 2, which is between 70 and 80% of your aerobic capacity, is all you need aerobically to stay in shape, right? And people say, well, how much and how long? Well, a little bit every day. Like the old commercial, Bro Cream, a little dab will do you, right? You just have to spark that every day. And then people will say, well, wait, what about weightlifting? Again, great idea. Now, we're introducing 2 things, the anaerobic engine and the aerobic engine. How much weightlifting? How often? Every study I've ever looked at, and I've looked at a lot, says that if you even do weightlifting once a week, meaning if you did a whole body thing, right? Like not Atkins, Nautilus, Arthur Jones used to tell you back in the 1970s. If you went in and just did 1 set of bench to failure, pushing away, 1 set of shoulder press, pushing up to failure, pulling down, 1 set to failure, pushing with your legs, a compound movement, meaning a leg press or a squat. If you did anything like that once a week, you can maintain. Now, once you hit your late 40s, early 50s, you're going to have a different problem, because sarcopenia is going to kick in. And to maintain, you need to do almost twice that much. Jack LaLanne knew that, right? So you would probably have to do it twice a week. So twice a week is a good idea. No, you don't have to look like a bodybuilder, but you should want to keep what you have, because, Eric, as a doctor, you know that when you look at all-cause mortality, they'll tell you that people with the weaker grips are the ones who die first, right? Because they couldn't grip something, they fell, broke their hip, and the next thing you know, we're like horses. You might as well shoot. Oh. Yeah, falls are the one thing. So, falling downstairs, falling off of a chair, it doesn't take much, right?
So the point I hear is some is better than none. Nobody knows the exact amount, but do some. And often that's what I'm finding that, but kind of like Gary Taubes said years ago, or recurring, he says, there are different kind of people, like different kind of dogs. You won't turn a basset hound or a beagle into a greyhound by putting it on a treadmill.
Right.
So I think there are different styles of human, but some exercise is better. What about, so worldwide? And I wonder maybe if there's another documentary here about exercise.
Well, I got my pen right here. Go on.
I remember so I was in college in 1980 in France. And I go out and jog, and everyone's looking at me like, who is this American? Even today, I mean, jogging is kind of an American thing. And even then, the blue zones, you're going to see Tai Chi and yoga worldwide. I mean, what's your take on, the global view exercise? Sure, people are doing things, but it's not always the gym, right?
It is weird when I go to England, and my sister-in-law lives in France most of the time. Her kids speak more French than they do English, even though my sister-in-law is British. And whenever, she has this beautiful place on some farmland in the middle of France. So when I'm out there, I look at that and go, okay, time to go for a jog. The looks you get, people will actually stop and offer you a ride. They think your car broke down and you're trying to get somewhere. They don't get it. And we're talking 2024 here. They don't get it. Even in England, when Serena and I, we go there every year for Christmas, and we want to go for jogs. They'll go for walks, right? They'll take walks, and they have sticks in their hands for some reason. I'm still not sure why everyone has a stick, but it looks awfully British, so I carry a stick too.
So they don't fall.
Well, it is always muddy, and you're wearing these, they call them wellies, but they're Wellington boots and the whole thing. You have to, or you'll have mud up to your ass. But yeah, they look at exercise way differently than we do. They say, why would you expend the energy? And they tell you that while they're smoking a cigarette. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that, I think exercise is kind of an American thing, more so than anywhere else. The
formality, turning it into a business with treadmills and all that is an American thing, but you can be fit and doing exercise in lots of different ways. And I think, while I have you, did you know Jack LaLanne? Or I read his bio, and he lived till his late 90s, and he gave up sugar when he was young. But if I can believe the bio, he also gave up red meat.
Go on.
Well, I was thinking that if you weren't in the health world, you weren't a doctor, and you just hear people saying things, he did, I'll give up both of these. Some people say red meat's bad. Some people say sugar is bad. And he exercised, the best I can tell you, is fit until his late 90s. And then, everyone our age knows him from the black and white TV, being the fitness, jumping jacks and all that. But he paid attention to his diet, is what I can tell.
He did. He did give up sugar very early. He and Vince Gironda and some of those old guys, and I didn't know Jack, to answer your question. But Vince Gironda was around at the same time. And also I did know Mickey Hargitay. Mickey was the one I was married to Jane Mansfield. He was the first Mr. Olympia before they started using steroids. So if you want to see, and Steve Reeves, I didn't know, but Mickey knew Steve Reeves. None of these guys used steroids. They weren't invented yet. And you can see what the human body could look like if you look at Hargitay, Steve Reeves, Vince Gironda, and all these guys, and also Jack, who took all of it and brought it to the world by being on television. These other guys didn't bring it to the world. I wrote about Jack in my book, Fitness Confidential, and his wife, Elaine LaLanne, she's still alive. She's in her 90s, and she still skateboards. And Elaine invited me to the house to see Jack's equipment and all the stuff because they have a museum in the house. I never made it to the house, and I regret I moved away from Los Angeles at some point, but I'm a big fan of Jack. Jack, my understanding from people who knew him, yes, he cut out sugars very early and processed carbohydrates. He kept meat and fish and eggs in his diet, but towards the end, he did not. Maybe he cut red meat out, but he didn't cut out eggs, and he didn't cut out dairy, so he wasn't a vegan. And it was around the time when he started promoting his, Vitamix or whatever that was. He was promoting grind up all your vegetables and drink them down with all the fiber and everything else. But he was still eating eggs and everything else. And if you look at all of those guys, that's how they looked the way they looked, right? Now guys have to take drugs to look like those guys looked, when you think about it. So I don't think he gave up animal proteins altogether.
Okay.
I don't have absolute proof of that, but I know people who knew the guy. And like I said, I knew people around him, and they wouldn't say that he did.
Well, I get a lot of mileage in the people my children's age. Just my view, of course, I'm in North Carolina. I don't have connections in the film or TV world. But Raven, the Cosby Show, That's So Raven, the Disney star, has been vocal about her keto journey to lose weight. It's been on prime time. And when I'm in the clinic and I see someone in their 30s-ish, I'll say, and Raven Simone is doing keto. Someone recently said, "Why didn't you tell me that at the beginning? You wouldn't. It didn't have." So I mean, there's no question of the celebrity influence, the testimonials. We need more of those. We need just to demonstrate that you can be healthy and thrive. And I look forward to watching all of your documentaries. I feel like we could talk another hour, but I want to be respectful. And where should people find what you're into right now?
The easiest way is to go to VinnieTortorich.com. We put everything there that we're doing. I'm on X and I'm on Instagram every day. Being shadow banned, but I'm there, doing what I can. Just go find me there. Go to Amazon to watch the new movie Dirty Keto. Work it backwards. Watch Dirty Keto. If you like what you see there, go backwards. Go see Beyond Impossible. Eventually, you'll get to the juggernaut that started it all, Fat, a Documentary, and you'll see Eric in that movie and also the sequel, Fat, a Documentary 2, which you actually see more of Eric, I think, in 2 than in 1.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And Eric, also, I want to invite you back on my show. It's been, I like to get all the regulars back on once a year, and I think it's been about a year, so it's time for you to come back on.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work. You're saving lives. Really think so.
You too.
Bye now.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out AdaptYourLifeAcademy.com.